kind of an introductory seminar that I've done in the past, but obviously we can take it to whatever level we want to. But first off, let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Greg Howell. We've obviously talked a little bit. I'm from Salt Lake. I've been investing for about 12 years now. I've been coaching for about 8 years for a variety of different groups. Like I mentioned, James Smith and Kiyosaki's group we did a little bit of work for. Graziosi, I know Carlton Sheets, and so I've worked with a lot of the groups, and actually a lot of the information I learned was by going through all of those programs. I probably bought just about every program that's out there. And so a lot of times students say, hey, I bought this program or I bought that program. I said, okay, I can teach anything that's in that program. Because that's how I learned, that's how I got started, and actually some of the initial coaching I got was from Carlton Sheets, and so it was just kind of a nice boost because there was a big difference between getting the book information and getting the theory versus actually implementing it and getting it going out in the field. And that's where I think most people get hung up is I think they learn the information, but then they don't know how to implement it. And that's where we can drive that through to completion and say, hey, instead of just talking about it, let's get out and give you some simple tasks, some simple objectives where you can go out and actually implement the theories and do some things that will make you some money. In terms of how I got started, my background is in hotel and resort management. That's what I studied in college. And just out of college, I started in management at a 1,000 unit timeshare resort. And if you think about a real estate success story, the guy who bought the land that I was working on down in Florida, he bought it down in the 70s, and what he used to do is he used to speculate in orange groves. So he went down, found a bunch of just open land, orange groves, and he just put ridiculously low bids on them. And once he picked up the land, then he would usually just sell it for a little bit of a profit and move on. Well, on this particular piece, he bought it, got under control, and within about 4 months, Disney came in and bought up everything right across the highway, Highway 192, down there in Kissimmee. And so he started out with 2 fourplexes right on the highway there, and by the time I went down there on their management team, they had 1,000 units that they were selling as timeshares. And during the time I was there in the late 90s, they expanded from 1,000 units to 3,000 units. So when I was there, they had 10 swimming pools, and they were adding another 5 or 6. I mean, it was a huge property. But you can imagine, you get in the right place at the right time, and you can make a killing. Obviously, that's not going to happen for everybody, but that's where I started out, was in that property. Then I moved up to Salt Lake. I became the assistant general manager at Embassy Suites Hotel. I had about 140 units. I was there during the Olympics back in the early 2000s in Salt Lake there. And through that experience, I just started to recognize, for example, at Embassy Suites Hotel, we were bringing in revenue of about $6 million a year. And I was managing all the operations, all the staff, all the maintenance, the restaurant, everything that had to do with that hotel I was in charge of at one time or another. And after a while, I started thinking, well, this is ridiculous, because if I know how to run a property that's bringing in $6 million, why don't I just own it? And so that's when I started getting out and saying, hey, I need to own the property rather than just be in management, because management, you don't get anywhere. You make a very meager salary. I had some young kids at the time, and you can't survive at that. I mean, especially in the hotel and resort field. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but they don't pay very well. They pay real low wages, even to the management, and you think it's pretty glamorous and fun, but it's actually not. It's just a lot of work. You're working holidays, weekends, evenings, the time when everybody else is playing is when you've got to be on the job. And so that's where I met Carlton Sheets. Ended up getting a little bit of advice from him, and from that point forward, I started going out and buying single-family homes and fixing them up, and then it just kind of rapidly grew to where we'd start doing multi-units and small apartments, and then it got into a little bit of land development, and then it just kind of got bigger and bigger. And then our most recent project was a commercial deal we did in Montana. We bought that about 3 years ago, and we're actually in the process of selling that right now. We can get into more details on that another time, but I've become a little more oriented in the commercial sector, so I have a lot of experience in the residential sector, but I've started to move more towards the commercial sector, both because of the profitability and the time efficiency. Because I found that when you're dealing with houses, you can make some good money, and it's a good place to start, and I think everybody should start there. But when you look at maximum efficiency, you've really got to start ramping up the size of the project that you get involved with. And so currently, we're working on probably 3 or 4 projects that are in the multi-million-dollar range. We've got one that's about 5.2 that we're working on right now down in the southeast. We've got one in Texas that's about 1.3. It's 100 units that we're trying to pick up down there. And so that's kind of the direction I'm headed, is getting more into the larger projects, and I've been developing the financial resources and the connections and the investors to help put those projects together, and that's the direction I'm going. Another reason I got involved with real estate is because I get bored easily. And when I was in management, one thing that we would do is, you've got your daily list of chores, and anybody who's got a job, you kind of know what I'm talking about. You go in, and every morning, first thing I do is I would do the revenue recap. And I just do all the daily numbers, run through the revenue, and send it off to the owner. And then I'd have to go in and get on the computer, and I'd have to reconcile the credit cards, make sure all the credit cards balance, and then you go and you check the front desk till. And and after a while, you get into such a system, you're thinking a monkey could do this, and it gets very unfulfilling in terms of your job satisfaction, because you don't feel like you're growing, you don't feel like you're progressing, and you just always need something different to do. And so it was driving me crazy, and that's why real estate came into play, because now if I get bored, if I feel like I'm not expanding or growing, I've got the ability to go out and find a bigger project, a better project, or just a different type of project. There's days when you may want to be inside. If the weather's like this, you want to be inside doing bookwork, running numbers. And that's something that'd be great to do on a day like today. During the summer months, you may want to be out doing some land development and walking properties. And that's something that you can do if you give yourself that flexibility by working with real estate. And most people don't understand that. They think, well, everything is going to be a job, but with this job, with dealing with real estate, you get to choose what kind of atmosphere you're working in every single day. And that's a great bit of flexibility that you can get involved with. The other thing is the power to get yourself into a financial independence situation as quickly as possible. And my dad taught me when I was growing up, he used to say, the whole game is not about retirement. Everybody always talks about early retirement. How many of you have thought about getting out quick? 40, 45, 50, right? And everybody's always into that quick retirement. Well, it's not about retirement. And my dad told me, he used to buy and sell businesses. And he said, it's amazing when you're retired, you get bored really fast, because you just don't have anything to do. And so he said, it's not an issue of retirement, it's an issue of financial independence, where you work when you want, how you want, as often as you want, and you get to make those choices. And so your objective should be more along the lines of getting financial independent, where you get to choose how much you work. And that's what real estate can offer you. You can do one project and gain financial independence, and you can do that in a period of 1 year. Most people don't understand. You can buy one property that nets you, let's say, $5,000 a month positive cash flow, and you're done. That's enough to live in some places. You could live on a lot less than that in some places. I've got clients in California, New York, and maybe their income would be more along the lines of $10,000 or $12,000 a month. Maybe Chicago, some places are like that. If that's the case, you could do 2 or 3 projects, accumulate the $10,000 to $12,000 a month in positive cash flow, and you're done. And that's one thing that I think a lot of people get hung up on, is when they get involved with real estate investment programs or manuals or books or tapes or anything like that. A lot of times those programs get into information overload, and they give you maybe 300 or 400 different ways of buying and selling property and different projects you can do. And what that does is subconsciously people can't absorb all that information. And they start thinking, subconsciously they think, oh shoot, if I'm going to be a successful investor, I have to master all of those different types of real estate transactions. And you just kind of automatically think that. And so then people don't get started because they don't have enough information to deal with all those types of deals. And it stagnates them. And what you need to understand is that you could focus exclusively on foreclosures or probate sales, or just multi-unit apartments or mobile home parks, and you could be done. That's the only thing you would ever have to do. My younger brother, I taught him how to buy real estate. He started out with a house. He bought a probate. It was an estate sale. And he parlayed that into a small rental property. And then he turned some of the profits from that into an art gallery. Now he owns an art gallery. He's paying that down, and he goes to work at 10 o'clock in the morning, and he has to work some weekends and things when they have art shows, but he has a lot more flexibility with his time, and that's off of 3 real estate deals. That's not too difficult. Anybody could do that, couldn't they? And so that's kind of the reason why I got into real estate investing. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to go through just a few of the basics, and since you guys have already been dealing with the basics, I'll ramp it up quite a bit in terms of giving you some examples of how to maybe take it to the next level, so to speak. So what we're going to do now, let's talk about the market analysis.